Better. Thanks, Jenny. Bye. You were getting that?
See metering, but I haven't heard anything yet.
2, 1, check 1, 2. Hey, hey, check 1, 2. 1, 2, 2. Check 1, 2. Hey, hey, check 1, 2. Beautiful.
carried on, though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. Apparently you can't hear me.
No, not yet. Just don't put too much anything right now.
The harp is on. I wouldn't have a clue what to do with that one. There's not even an on button.
There is an on button.
Is there?
Somewhere too.
Okay. I just
Better not touch it.
not touching. Oh, I can hear me now. Ah.
Can you hear?
Want to start? Should we go again? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Can you hear me? You can hear me too?
Yes.
Should we take it from the place from the second verse?
Yes. 3. Ship called Lady Pale, language left behind. Roaring seas and hunger leaves us crying for home. Can't talk to each other as English is spoken here. I fight for life and I don't know why. Far from home, I carried on, though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. In Sydney town we arrived. We'd never seen such heat. Hundreds here just like me, knowing not what comes next. In the goldfields of Marie, fertilize the soil and grow the country's rich ideas. Far from home, I carried on, though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. I'm proud of all you here who carry on the flame. For those like me who come here with broken hearts, to educate and feed them, there's space for all to flourish and grow the country's rich ideas. Far from home, we carry on, though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on, pretending we are strong, until one day we are. We carry on, though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on, pretending we are strong, until one day we are. Until one day we are. We'll need them for the first one, but not that one now.
Can't really hear anything. Do you want to start the other one?
Yes, please.
Because
Ron's
the other one
took my
will need
papers away.
my music stand.
On the...
Huh?
Two, 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 two. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. What's going on? What's going on? 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 1. Yeah, yeah.
Is it still in it? Sorry? Is it still in there, this distortion?
No, I think it's when she hits those high notes.
Do you know what? It's okay. I can roll back on our marker, but if it's distorting, then it's level is fine. The level is just good. If anything, the harp is a little bit hot. I don't want to change anything now. Let's do that.
This is going to be the first song, and the one that we just did is going to be the second song. So we've done 2, 3.
I am an orphan girl. In Westport I was found. The workhouse is my world. Since the Brady's took us down, what time in life is left to me if I don't leave Westport town? But the Crown is sending girls to sea for far Australia bound. Sail, sail, sail me away, sail to Australia, yea. Sail, sail, sail me, I pray, sail me away to Australia.
That's good enough. I won't be singing harmony for the first chord, but I just want to check.
Absolutely, it's fine.
So, now, Jeff, just letting you know, when I don't have to play the harp, I'm going to detach. So if we'll just do the sign, and you can help.
everybody seated? Is this working? Yes? Okay. Could we all be seated, please? Now, where's... And Joan? Joan? You better come up. You two can get ready. Sorry, I shouldn't have told you to sit down. Now, having told you to be seated, I now want you all to stand for the national anthems. Yeah, you're going to sing, aren't you? Yep, yep. Yep. Okay. Yep, yep. You'll do it, yes. Don't stay away from the lectern. Okay.
Yes. So they... Ready?
Australians, all let us rejoice, for we are young and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds with nature's gifts of beauty rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair. Beneath our radiant Southern Cross we'll toil with hearts and hands to make this commonwealth of ours renowned through all the lands. For those who come across the sea, we've boundless plains to share. With courage let us all combine to advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you, Joan. Would you like to go and sit down?
Tjena fina folk, att ta för alla gären. Vindar slog, har tider rang i kuin. Fwej vajt väser, chanterar sin kör fasta. Ni jag för vi dirana vi dra. Anaktar heim savana väl. Lägel kan bars no sel. Nagani skrek, ni la vakna till är. Kärlek kan ik här vin.
Please be seated. Oh, yes, sorry, yes.
All right. We acknowledge that we are meeting here today on the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We respect their continuing connection to the land, water and community. We pay respect to elders past, present and emerging.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, GIFCC members, supporters and friends watching via live stream around the world, welcome. Today we remember all those whose lives were lost or were changed dramatically as a result of Angkor, the Great Famine, which occurred in Ireland in the middle of the 19th century. This beautiful memorial, the Australian Monument to the Great Irish Famine, commemorates the thousands of people who emigrated to Australia at the time in the hope of a better life. Among those immigrants were 4,114 young girls, most of whom were orphans, who were offered the opportunity to escape the horror of overcrowded workhouses and very poor prospects in Ireland, to travel to Australia, where there was opportunity for employment and as well for marriage. How desperate and at the same time brave these young girls must have been. The 400 names engraved on the glass walls of the memorial represent all the girls who made this journey. They came on a series of 20 ships, like the Earl Grey to Sydney, arriving on October the 6th, 1848. The Pemberton to Melbourne on May the 14th, 1849. The Roman Emperor to Adelaide on October the 23rd, 1848. And the Calcutta to Hobart, arriving on November the 2nd, 1851. These girls are now the 2 times and 3 times great-grandmothers of thousands of Australians living today. Today, along with their descendants, we remember them. Thank you. I would now like to introduce Adam Lindsay, Executive Director of Sydney Living Museums, who are caretakers of this magnificent historic building I'm facing, now known as the Hyde Park Barracks Museum. It's our version of the epic immigrant museum in Dublin, but these are immigrants to Australia. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, whose land we meet on today, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. My name's Adam Lindsay. I'm the Executive Director of Sydney Living Museums and New South Wales State Archives. I'd like to welcome you all to the Hyde Park Barracks for the 2020 Great Irish Famine commemoration. Thank you to Trish and the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee for inviting me to speak today. Sydney Living Museums is always proud to support this event, commemorating such an important and impactful time in our history. Now, I know that we're here today under the constraints of some unusual circumstances, and would like to acknowledge that those joining us in person at the Australian Monument to the Great Irish Famine, and also that there are people joining us online. Thank you. As most of you will know, this site has deep and poignant connection to the story of the Irish Famine. The Hyde Park Barracks was inscribed on the UNESCO Memory of the World Heritage List 10 years ago for its convict history. However, the site has played an integral role in Australian immigration more broadly. From 1788 to 1840, about 1/3 of the convicts that were transported to New South Wales, many of whom passed through the Hyde Park Barracks, were Irish. From 1848, the barracks was transformed into an immigration depot to house the rapidly increasing number of free female immigrants to Sydney who were arriving in the colony. About 85% of the immigrant women and children who arrived at the immigration depot in the 1850s and 1860s were survivors of the Great Irish Famine. Like much of the Irish population, these families were pushed to the brink of starvation, and they made the very difficult decision to leave their homelands and take a new chance for a life in a land of opportunity. It's really difficult to imagine the feelings they would have experienced when arriving for the first time. The barracks as their first port of call, apprehension, uncertainty, and maybe hope for their new lives and what they may offer. These women and families left an enduring legacy both here at the barracks and throughout the country. Their relatives, some of whom are among us today, I'm sure, are proof of this. Now, like it has for most of us, 2020 has been a somewhat turbulent and interesting year for the Hyde Park Barracks. In February, the site reopened to the public after a year-long renewal period. And then, less than a month later, it closed at the hands of a global pandemic. In July, the barracks had its second and unbudgeted reopening, and we're now welcoming visitors again. Part of the renewal of the site saw the development of the New Beginnings Gallery, devoted to female immigration from 1848 to 87. It's on the ground floor of the gallery's main building. For those of you who have already visited the new Hyde Park Barracks, you'll be familiar with the technologically groundbreaking story guide that's used to tell the history of this site. You'll also be familiar with one of the guides you hear throughout the experience, Margaret Hurley. Margaret Hurley was a 17-year-old from Gort, County Galway, who was among the 194 Irish girls to set sail for New South Wales on 28 October 1849. Margaret was just one of the 2,253 Irish orphan girls who passed through the depot within the first few years, a victim of famine. Margaret stayed at the depot only briefly before being employed in Yass as a house servant. She later married, had 7 children, and lived a long, full and happy life. More than 160 years after her time at the barracks, Margaret's original trunk is a feature of the new display. As her story is shared with thousands of visitors through the story guide, Margaret brings home the reality of the experience of so many migrants of this time in a deeply personal way that's sad, funny, frightening and wondrous. Her name is also engraved on the memorial behind us. In the newly formed Legacy Gallery, we also hear from relatives of some other Irish immigrants and convicts who passed through the site. I'm told some of you who helped us with this display might be listening today online, so I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Gary Trigg, a descendant of Irish orphan Anne Brady, who arrived at the immigration depot in 1850, and convict William Trigg, who arrived in Sydney in 1837. George Wilson, a descendant of Irish orphan Catherine Fox, who arrived at the immigration depot in 1848, and Mark Jenner, a descendant of Irish orphan Mary Dunphy, who arrived at the immigration depot in 1849. Your contributions to the Hyde Park Barracks Renewal Project really helped to bring to life the convergence of this very important part of Irish and Australian history. Thank you again for having me with you today to commemorate the Great Irish Famine and the very many lives that it affected. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Our next speaker is Irish Consul General Owen Feeney, to whom the committee is indebted for his valuable guidance and support. Owen.
Acáirde, it's more an pleasure dom if I shall live in you and Gortamore Howard. I would also like to at the outset associate myself with the acknowledgement of country and to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. As Ireland's Consul General to New South Wales, it is a great honour to participate in this morning's ceremony. Today we recall all those who have suffered and left our island during what was a really defining period in Irish history. I wish to offer the apologies of my friend and colleague Ambassador O'Quayle. I know himself and Carmel would very much have liked to have been here this morning to join you in recalling this moment in Irish history. At the outset, I would also like to pay tribute and to acknowledge the commitment to this memory of Sydney Living Museum, of Adam Lindsay and his team for hosting this monument and for the most wonderful renovation they've done to the building that we look at today. It's wonderful to hear that it has reopened and that the story, which is so intrinsic and central to the Irish story in Australia, continues to be shared with new audiences. And I just want to congratulate you for the way in which you have embraced technology in telling that story in such an engaging manner. I had the opportunity when it first reopened, to hear Margaret Hurley's narration and was also struck by the fact that she shares a surname with the Governor-General of Australia, Governor-General David Hurley, who I had the honour to help in his research of his genealogy. He is not a descendant of Margaret Hurley, but Murto Hurley, who was probably one of the convicts who came through here from Ballinasspittle in Cork. So it's wonderful to see her at the centre of your story, and thank you for continuing to embrace that story and to share it. There are many things, as Consul General, that I love about this monument. Not just the legacy that it upholds and the history that it recalls, but also the stories that I've heard in the last 2 years of its origins, the effort and battles that went into bringing it into existence. These were not unlinked to its location, which also really appeals to me. And finally, I love it for its striking design and the fact that it is so thought-provoking and different to many other monuments you see around the world. Let me start with the monument's origins. In those origins, I see a conversation between visiting heads of state of Ireland and the Irish community here in Sydney. This conversation started with the call made by our former President, Mary Robinson, when she visited Australia in 1995. The call was responded to by the community, led by the late Tom Power, who drove this project, and to whom we owe an incredible debt of gratitude for the fact that we are standing here today marking the unveiling of the monument. His considerable contribution was acknowledged by President Michael D. Higgins in 2018 when Tom was posthumously awarded the Presidential Distinguished Service Award. Tom was only the third ever Australian-based recipient of this award. President Higgins, of course, had seen firsthand the impact of this monument, including in 2018 when he visited and laid a floral tribute with Premier Gladys Berejiklian. I'd also like, in the year that he passed, to recall the contribution and leadership offered by Jack Mundy in making sure that this monument was erected and erected here as well. The presidential conversation continued, which was initiated by Mary Robinson, continued when Mary McAleese, as president, visited and inaugurated the memorial. When she returned to Sydney, she saw the final construction and she marvelled at Hussein and Angela Valamaneish's striking and evocative design. President McAleese saw the symbolism of the Earl Grey girls' journey, with the walls of the barracks opening to them and Australia revealing itself. This was an Australia that they would go on to shape, the 4,114 girls who came out during that time. President McAleese acknowledged the debt that we owe those girls, and indeed all the men, women and children who came from Ireland with little and built up this great democracy under the Southern Cross. Out of their courage, guts and gumption, she said, was distilled the Australian spirit that we love today. For me, at a time when we are still unfortunately talking about erecting walls and barriers, there is something very powerful about the idea of a wall being pushed open and being pushed back to reveal a new country. To my mind, it speaks to the resilience of migrants, the sacrifices they make, but also the strength that they bring, what they leave behind and what they contribute to their new country. I was struck when I first arrived here in Sydney by the location of the monument. Not only within the walls of the barracks that are so steeped in Irish-Australian history, but also for the fact that it looks out to Hyde Park, which was the site of many of the early St. Patrick's Day celebrations here in the city. And also that it looks out to St. Mary's Cathedral, which Father Terry and so many Irish Catholics fought for here in Sydney. And as many have rightly noted, that it also sits very quietly and discreetly and beautifully telling its story next to Queen Victoria across the street. The monument really is a fitting legacy to the brave stories of the orphan girls. And that legacy today is continued through the work of the committee in supporting refugees and the education of young women who've made their own challenging journeys to make a new life in Australia. And it is another part of the monument and the work that the committee does that really appeals to me. I look forward to meeting Maximilian and Zainab and congratulate you in person on your well-deserved prizes today. Before finishing, I'd like to pay tribute to Trish Power and her committee for all the incredibly hard work they put into organising today's ceremony. I love how you have taken the restrictions of COVID and turned it on its head and opened it up to a global audience, and that you can have some of the descendants of the 4,000 girls watching from their living rooms, maybe from their bed on a Sunday morning, and hopefully enjoying today's ceremony. I also want to pay tribute to the work of the committee for their wider commemorations of the famine, sharing the stories of the orphan girls, and upholding the legacy by supporting women who have come to Australia and overcome adversity to make new lives. Your committee are among the most active members of our community, and we are very lucky to have you. And thank you for the work that you do, not just in terms of this incredible monument and maintaining the story, but also for the wider community as well. It is hugely appreciated. I'm really looking forward to hearing Cliona and Jackie in a couple of minutes, and thank you for joining us. Finally, it is important that we recall, I think, that the messages of resilience and hope, what Mary McAleese as president described as the courage, guts and gumption of the girls who came here, that we can take messages, I think, of resilience and hope from that. Messages and emotions that are perhaps more important right now than any time they will be during our lifetimes, and that we need more than ever. So once again, I'd like to thank the committee for organising today's ceremony, and thank you all for joining us both here and virtually, and I look forward to hearing the music. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen, for those lovely words. And we'll now have some music from Cliona Mullins and Jackie McPhee. Thank you.
Westport I was found. The workhouse is my world, since the Brady's took us down. What time in life is left to me if I don't leave Westport town? But the Crown is sending girls to sea for far Australia bound. Sail, sail, sail me away, sail to Australia, yea. Sail, sail, sail me, I pray, sail me away to Australia. They say Australia's fine, they say Australia's fair. Australia's on my mind, and the fields of praties there. I pray when this inspection's done that they'll say me fit to sail, for they don't just send out anyone. Oh Lord, don't see me fail. Sail, sail, sail me away, sail to Australia, yea. Sail, sail, sail me, I pray, sail me away to Australia. Scarcely turned 16, but I'm ready now to go. I'm decent and I'm clean, fit for any man to know. And I will be some good man's wife if there I settle down and find myself a better life if I get to Sydney town. Sail, sail, sail me away, sail to Australia, yea. Sail, sail, sail me, I pray, sail me away to Australia.
now like to invite Owen to lay a wreath, some flowers on the memorial on behalf of the Irish government. I will lay some flowers on behalf of the Great Irish Famine Commemoration Committee, and other people who have flowers that they would like to lay may join us. Thank you. Thank you, Dawn, Joan and Eva. These ladies are all members of our committee, and Dawn and Joan are both descendants of famine orphans. We're very pleased to have them on our committee. We have another new member of our committee who's also a descendant, Janine Heinemann, who happens to live in Queensland and couldn't come as much as she wanted to come. Hopefully she'll be here next year. We now move on to the second part of our ceremony, and this is part of the committee's work to look towards the future, to acknowledge the present as well. To reward study and research in history, each year the GIFCC awards a prize to a History Honours student at Macquarie University. This year I am happy to introduce Max Barnett, who receives the 2020 Irish Famine Memorial History Honours Prize in the Masters by Research program at Macquarie University. I invite Max to receive his prize and say a few words. Where are you, Max? Over to you, Max. Well,
What do we do? Receiving first? Yep.
we'll receive it first. Now, Joan is going to give you your certificate.
Max, it's lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you.
Congratulations
It's
on
a
all
beautiful
your
rendition
hard
of
work.
it. Thank you.
I think well done.
Thank you very much. I'd like to begin today by ignoring. We already done that plenty throughout our history. Acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and acknowledge elders past, present and future. I'd like to thank you all as well for giving me this opportunity today. It was, as I've said to a few of you, a lovely surprise to receive an email in the middle of a pandemic lockdown that brought me great joy in a time that is very difficult for all of us. My work is on famine throughout history generally and scarcity, and how different human societies have dealt with famine in different ways. Some have got through it very well, more successfully than others, minimising the suffering and allowing their kind of societies to continue on exceptionally well. Others have not done so well and have experienced great suffering as a result. Now, I'd just like to quickly talk about a general period of history which is very pertinent to what we're talking about today. Okay, it was the period in the 1840s. It was a period of great famine or great scarcity throughout all of Europe. Okay, there's kind of geographical conditions or environmental conditions causing famine in the late 1840s. All right, and much has been made of this period in kind of general European history. All right, the revolutions of 1848. There were many countries or many states in Europe that experienced revolution through that period. Most famously, the Second French Revolution, but many others that didn't succeed still went ahead, including countries such as Switzerland and Germany, or Prussia rather. I'd like to focus, much has been made as well of by British historians of the fact that Britain managed to get through this great period without a revolution. Much has been made by British historians that British history has not been British history has never included a revolution. And it's true, England at least got through this very difficult period exceptionally well. They managed to avoid a revolution through this kind of model of industrial capitalism that had allowed them to do so well throughout the kind of early part of the 19th century. But there is a story that's been forgotten a little bit by British historians of this period. And it's very easy to kind of look at Britain's success and say, well, they did it well because they had this great new capitalist model, this great new way of doing things. But it's also very easy to forget that in order for this success to happen, there needed to be a kind of fall guy. That kind of industrial capitalist model where Britain was able to buy their way out of famine happened at the expense of a little island to the west of them. Because Britain succeeded so well, or the reason that Britain succeeded so well was because they were able to exploit their neighbour island. And as a result, while British people did so well and
didn't suffer as much during this famine. The Irish suffered horribly. Okay, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from history, and this is one of the great ones. We can try and kind of move forward and take advantage of the fact that we are living in a kind of beautiful country, in an excellent country, in the kind of top bracket of the world. But any model of kind of any model of like that, where there is that inequality, is going to have a great issue for the people. If something goes wrong, there's going to be a great issue for the people that are left behind. So I guess I just want to close today by saying that it's not just the Irish that are talking about Irish history anymore. Okay, as historians, we listened to your stories and the stories of many others of the exploited throughout the world, and I will continue to try and learn the lessons of history and pass them on, and I'd just like you to know that your story will not be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you, Max, and we wish you well with your further study, PhD coming up in a couple of years, and we hope to hear more from you. Now, I'm just seeing where I'm up to. Now, since 1788, people have come to settle in Australia for one reason or another. My own forebears migrated from Scotland in 1853 and settled in Queensland, I'm sure for better opportunity. Pre and post World War II, Europeans came in droves. They were called migrants. I remember meeting many of them as a child. People fleeing from Vietnam were designated boat people. I'm sure all of you remember that period of our history. Following the establishment of this memorial to those who came from Ireland in the 19th century, the GIFCC actively engaged in supporting people arriving in Australia in the 21st century. These refugees, as they are known, have also sought safety and opportunity denied to them in their places of origin. In 2001, the GIFCC established a fund to support South Sudanese refugees being assisted to adapt to life in their new country by the Sisters of Mercy at Mamre Homestead and Farm, located at St Mary's in Western Sydney. We continue to support the programs at Mamre through the Catholic Social Services, who now manage those programs. Subsequently, a plan was hatched to provide a scholarship for a female refugee studying at Western Sydney University. Initially, the fund provided an annual prize, but in 2018 we had sufficient funds to enable us to award a scholarship then and again in 2019. This year, COVID-19 has intervened and interrupted the scholarship application process. I would now like to invite Lisa Morissette, the manager from the Development Office of Advancement at Western Sydney University, to speak. Thank you, Lisa.
I acknowledge that we're gathered here today on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Invited guests and our remote audience, and Trish and the Global Irish Famine Commemoration Committee. Thank you so much for inviting me to give a few words today. And more importantly, thank you so much for the support of your prizes and scholarships for refugee women at Western Sydney University. It's an honour to be one of a very small group on site here at Hyde Barracks today, noting very unusual circumstances, but it's also very special for me to be returning to this site. I came here a number of years ago doing some research on Elizabeth Macquarie, husband of the Governor Lachlan Macquarie, and stumbled upon the newly opened memorial here, and actually found myself in tears on the street of Sydney. For those of you that haven't been here, who are watching remotely, it is an incredibly powerful, simple, emotive and very unusual memorial, as we heard earlier from Owen. But the reason that I was so profoundly moved also was because the memorial front-loads so clearly and so importantly the history of women and their contribution from early colonial Australia, and we track that impact right through to today. And that's it's a very unusual interpretation of history. It's not seen very often. We see it perhaps at the Female Factory in Tasmania, in Hobart. We see it at the Tumbaraba Women's Museum. But it's a very unusual perspective. It doesn't happen very often, and so it's very special from that perspective as well. So to then begin working with Western Sydney University and finding myself reconnecting with the memorial and Trish was a double surprise. Western Sydney University sits within a region of Australia that's the fastest growing region. 1 in 11 Australians live right out there underneath the mountains. And we know that at Western Sydney University, more than 100, Western Sydney University students come from over 180 countries. The majority of our students don't speak English as their first language at home, and the refugee and migrant community are a critical part of the focus our university places on education as a transformational experience, transforming the region, transforming Australia in our community, but also transforming the lives of the students who come from exceptionally difficult circumstances and go on to receive a degree and contribute in all sorts of ways to our community. The first recipient of the Global Irish Famine Committee Scholarship graduated last year and is now practising as a nurse in Western Sydney. And in these extraordinary times, I can't think of any more amazing contribution to be making on a day-to-day basis. And that success is held in very significant part to the contributions of the GIFCC. And we know that as Maximilian just detailed, famine is not a historical notion to be studied from afar, that across the world there is still great struggle and great difficulty through famine and war, and the impact that those experiences have are felt broadly, but most acutely often by women who wear a double-edged sword of the economic loss as well as the challenges and responsibilities of family. When we imagine back to the voyage of the women that are documented behind us, it's hard to put ourselves in their shoes, and yet every day there are women joining our Australian community from countries overseas facing similar travail with similar resolve and commitment. So Western Sydney University is thrilled that we're able to play a small part in transforming the lives of those migrants and those refugees. We note that it's very important in these really difficult times that no one is left behind. It's very easy for us to close down and to protect our own at a time when in fact our arms need to be opened wide, and we need to take care of ourselves and our community, take care of everyone. So on behalf of Western Sydney University, congratulations to Max and the previous recipients of these prizes and awards. We wish all of you every success. We thank the Global Irish Famine Committee and all of the donors who've made a contribution as they're able to support these scholarships and prizes. A small amount makes a profound difference to a person's life, and I encourage you all to give if you can. And mostly, thank you again for this event today. Please, good health to all of you, and do take care of one another.
Thank you, Lisa. Although we weren't able to award a scholarship at the moment for this year, we hope it will happen before the end of the year. We are delighted to be awarding the 2020 Irish Famine Memorial Prize for Excellence at Western Sydney University to a young Afghani lady, Zainab Kavari, who has continued her studies in accountancy and law under challenging circumstances. Zainab, will you please come forwards to receive your prize and tell us a little about your journey? Zainab is accompanied today by her 6-year-old son, Mohammed Yama. Now, Dawn is going to give you your prize.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I'm a lawyer too, so.
Thank you so much. Very good. Over to you. I'll just get my glasses out of the way.
Hi everyone. My dream has finally come true, to be able to have a voice and to see others want to listen to me. Today I'm standing in front of you all as a woman from country we are not standing behind the microphone is difficult, but to be able to have a voice in the open is impossible. I'm standing here today in front of you all as a woman suffered enough to become the impossible and beat all the odds. I'm a woman. I'm a single mother. I'm a student. I'm a fighter and dreamer. I don't want to lose hope, but still the unknown and the trauma from the past experience filled me with anxiety and depression until I recognized refugee and received permanent visa from Australia. I came to Australia with my 1-year-old son. This was where I decided that I won't be the victim of my circumstance. I fight all the odds and want to be visible, taking education as a tool to move forward. I chose Western Sydney University and applied. I had my doubt to where will I be fit? Am I smart enough? This and that. But with all the right support from this wonderful university, I got all the confidence. And as a recipient, I got all the confidence to make the impossible possible. I had been honored as a recipient of Great Irish Feminine Memorial Prize. I feel so fortunate to have been selected as a recipient of this honor. I would like to express my deepest gratitude for the generous prize you have given to me. Opportunities like these open doors for women like me who doesn't have much support from family and community that she from. Being achiever is great, but to be achiever, to help others to be achiever as well, that is the whole level of greatness, and it is my dream. I plan to continue my education and eventually build a career in the accounting and law. Studying law and accounting is not to look the best of all, but to understand the law of the land which I'm living and to have a voice and to have my heartbeat in every social justice platform to give voiceless a voice. This is my promise that I will serve the humanity with the best knowledge and people around me. Thank you all again for wonderful opportunity given to me. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Zainab. We wish you every success in your endeavours and your aspirations. Look forward to keeping in touch with you. Earlier this year, we were not at all confident that we could have any sort of commemoration this year. COVID-19 has made us find alternative ways of doing things. Because we are permitted to have a small gathering, albeit a small gathering, I think it was very important that we did have a gathering. We are pleased to be able to share with the many people who would normally be here on our live stream, and thanks to Vest Campion for organising that. On behalf of the GIFCC, I wish to thank our speakers, Adam, Owen and Lisa, Susan Sedgwick of SLM, who has been a great support to the GIFCC and all our endeavours associated with Hyde Park Barracks Museum, our musicians, our vocalists, our video cameraman and our photographer, who have made wonderful contribution to making today happen. Last but not least, I thank my fellow committee members, Martin Folan, our Vice Chair, Dawn Wong, our Secretary, Breda Drumgool, our Treasurer, Joan Leach, and who else is here? Who have I forgotten? Oh, Eva, you're hiding. And a few committee members who weren't able to be here today. Thank you very much, everybody. We are now going to... Oh, you want to come and say something, Mehmet? Good, lovely. Can you reach up there? Oh, wait a minute, careful, we're not supposed to touch it. Wait a minute, I'm not sure how to do this.
Okay.
Mohammed Yama.
Thank you all for supporting me and my mum.
Oh, it's lovely. Very nice. You're a very lovely little boy. What a nice way to end today. Thank you very much, everybody.
Several years ago, I played at this very wall, playing the harp, and I was invited by Tom, Trish's husband, who's no longer with us. And as I am today, I was incredibly moved hearing extensive information about the famine that I didn't know about, and finding out about the women that had come, and I was so blown away meeting the descendants, the many descendants after the event, who were contributing physical money, remember physical money, afterwards, and some of them were telling me stories of their great-grandmothers had 10 children in the family, or 14 children, 12 children. So I really got a sense that the women that came with these ships as orphans contributed enormously, and that this committee continues to contribute. And I have to say that Jackie and I were shedding a little tear listening to Zainab speaking, because I suppose it was that feeling of these women giving back and how proud they would be to hear what the committee here has been able to do and pay forward. So this song comes out of that. It's really about the unsung songs of women who, in the previous century, 2 centuries ago, didn't have a voice much, and so I loved hearing about Zainab talking about giving her voice, and this is the voice of one of the many women that came. So it's a song that I wrote many years ago and asked Jackie to sing, and she took it and ran with it. We'd love if you looked at the lyrics to the song, because it really sings to the courage of these women as young girls and as women that went off to the gold fields. So we'd love you to join in the chorus.
Stories and songs are gone, brothers and parents too. The starved bog of Mayo holds no future for me. Tomorrow I'm 14, no longer Bridge, but Bridget, and entered to Australia, far from home. I carried on, though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. A ship called Lady Peel, my language left behind. Roaring seas and hunger leaves us crying for home. Can't talk to each other as English is spoken here. I fight for life and I don't know why. Far from home, I carried on, though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. In Sydney town we arrived. We'd never seen such heat. Hundreds here just like me, knowing not what comes next. In the gold fields of marine, I'll fertilize the soil and grow the country's rich ideas. Far from home, I carried on, though my heart was broke. I carried on because I carried on, pretending I was strong, until one day I was. like me who come here with broken hearts to educate and feed them. There's space for all to flourish and grow the country's rich ideas far from home. We carry on though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on pretending we are strong until one day we are. We carry on though our hearts are broke. We carry on because we carry on pretending we are strong until one day we are. Until one day we are.
Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful harp music and singing. Absolutely beautiful. And of course the harp is a symbol, or the symbol of Ireland. Thank you everyone. And this brings this morning's proceedings to a close. Thank you for all being here.